BJ Mafia was popping. So the NBA All-Star Game is just right around the corner. February 2nd, the NBA will be releasing the reserves for the entire Eastern and Western Conference for this year's All-Star Game. And as you guys can see from the title of this video, I'm gonna be talking about my prediction for this year's reserves in the Eastern Conference. And then the very next video, I'll go ahead and I'll do the Western Conference, so make sure you guys do stay tuned for that. And I wanna talk about the reserves that I'm gonna be predicting for the Eastern Conference. So let's get right into today's video. Now, before I actually do get into the reserves, I do want to say two things. One, I'll briefly list off the starters. I know you guys have already seen, but I'm going to list them off. I've got Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. All of these guys are deserving to make this year's All-Star Game and to be starters. But here's where my issue was, and I already voiced my opinion, so I won't go too far into it. Joel Embiid deserved to be a starter. He's in the MVP conversation. He's one of the best big men in the game and the most dominant specimen in the game next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Just had to say that he absolutely deserved to be a starter. We play in an era of positionless basketball. Enough talking about that, let's actually get into my reserves. So the first reserve I'm gonna talk about in the Eastern Conference is gonna be with Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is a phenomenal two-way player. He obviously really had a huge showing last year in the postseason next to Jason Tatum, getting the Boston Celtics to the NBA Finals last season, and Jaylen Brown has continued to ascend this season. He's still one of the best 3-and-D guys in the game, and we know Jaylen Brown can take over at any moment. Jaylen Brown, to me, is an automatic lock for a reserve in terms of the Eastern Conference guards in the backcourt. Another guy I want to add onto this list is going to come with Tyrese Halliburton. Now, we do know Tyrese Halliburton has been injured and a little bit banged up these last couple of weeks, but if you ask me, I think Tyrese Halliburton is the next Chris Paul, the next great point guard, all-time great point guard. I think Tyrese Halliburton has the skill set and the work ethic, and you've seen how much his jump shot has improved since coming into the league. When he was in Sacramento, now to being in Indiana, I think he's one of the best 3-and-D players, one of the young elite guards, and we know he's one of the best at facilitating the ball. Tyrese Halliburton's had a phenomenal season outside of just his injuries. When Halliburton's on the court, he's one of the best players in the game. I think Tyrese Halliburton needs to be an absolute lock in this year's All-Star Game. Now moving into the front court in terms of the reserves, I'm going to talk about Joel Embiid, a guy who I already briefly talked about. Joel Embiid, one of the best big men of the game, leading the Philadelphia 76ers to one of the best records in the Eastern Conference. And Embiid also just put on an absolute show the other night versus Nikola Jokic at the Wells Fargo Center. And Joel Embiid's looking to continue to build on that dominance. Even though the 76ers lost that game badly, Joel Embiid is still a dominant specimen, and he's one of the best bigs in the game and one of the best players in the NBA today. Joel Embiid absolutely is an all-star this year. Now I'm going to go up north and talk about a player up in Canada in Spicy P, Pascal Siakam himself. And Pascal has played phenomenal this season. We know the kind of player that he is defensively speaking. We know the kind of game that Pascal's got offensively speaking. He's got an entire arsenal. He can take it to the rack. He's got a great post-up game. One of the best mid-range shooters, I think, in the game. And Pascal Siakam can easily give you 25, 10, and 8 on any given night. We know he's the catalyst for why the Toronto Raptors have had so much success this year. And with a down year from Scottie Barnes and Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam's put this team on his back, and he's doing the best that he can to get to the Toronto Raptors to play winning basketball. And Spicy P absolutely deserves to be an all-star. The next all-star reserve I have in the front court is going to come with down south in the 305 in Dade County, Bam Adebayo. Now, Bam Adebayo is one of the best and most versatile defenders in the NBA. I think he's a top 3 candidate this year, next to Jaren Jackson Jr. and Nicholas Claxton for this year's Defensive Player of the Year race. And Bam Adebayo absolutely should be in this year's All-Star game. I don't think he gets enough love and enough credit, especially considering the fact that the Miami Heat were struggling to start off this year, and they're playing very inconsistent. But Bam Adebayo is absolutely deserving to be in this year's All-Star game. Truly one of the more underrated and underappreciated players, I would say, in today's game. Now going on to the 2 wild card players in this year's All-Star game that are going to be reserves, I got to talk about the other 76ers pair and duo with James Harden. Now, this James Harden is obviously not the James Harden that we saw back in Houston with Mike D'Antoni, and that team had championship aspirations even though they never got over the hump. And that was obviously a James Harden that was one of the greatest, most electrifying offensive players this game had ever seen. He kind of helped to revolutionize the game of basketball in the way that the team-oriented plays with spacing out shooters. but also James Harden was one of the most highest usage players in NBA history that we'd ever seen. But now this James Harden's taken that transition to where he doesn't quite have that same athletic ability, but we see that he bought into Doc Rivers' system. After getting there last year, he decided to become a full-time facilitator. We know James Harden has always been one of the elite passers in the game, but I think he takes a different level and pride with it now. And you know James Harden's gonna give you at least 20 on efficient shooting from now on, with also 10, 11 assists on any given night. James Harden's really bought into what Doc Rivers has asked of him. Another year under Doc Rivers' system, another year with more chemistry and continuity with guys like Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Shake Milton, and the entire 76ers team. I think that you've really seen James Harden take an onus and kind of put his pride aside from what a guy that he once was, where he was a 35+ point per game scorer, to now a guy who's gonna average 20, but he's gonna be a guy who's gonna facilitate at an extremely high rate. I love what I'm seeing from James Harden. He deserves to be in this year's All-Star game. Now, the very last guy that's gonna be in this year's All-Star game that deserves to be in it is gonna come with forward from the New York Knicks, Julius Randle. Now, Julius Randle had a bit of a down season last year. A lot of Knicks fans were disgruntled and upset with him, and because of his lackadaisical play, his ugly turnovers, and it just really looked like Julius Randle had not taken that next step up after showing an impressive 2020 campaign. But Julius Randle has stepped it up yet again. And coming from a guy who's actually watched a lot of Knicks games this year, Julius Randle's out there consistently hustling. He's a very vocal leader. I think he's doing a great job being tenacious, getting rebounds, getting boards. He's facilitating, and even when he has his lackadaisical turnovers and it looks like, what the hell are you doing, Julius Randle? Julius Randle is absolutely one of the best forwards in this game, and he deserves to be in this year's All-Star game. He's a bucket. I think he's a great leader for the New York Knicks, and he's doing a great job really putting the team on his back, especially with a guy like RJ Barrett, who's not really taking that step up like you've wanted to see, especially after getting his contract. Put Julius Randle in this year's All-Star game. Now, the one name that should make this year's All-Star game in the Eastern Conference, but won't because there's just not enough roster space, and I'm sorry, that's gonna come with Jalen Brunson. Now, I would love to see the Knicks duo in the All-Star game. Jalen Brunson, who was the overpaid player of this offseason, deserves to be in the All-Star game. He's played like an All-Star, and he's really shut up a lot of the critics, but I think that Jalen Brunson doesn't get in because I think James Harden simply gets in. And James Harden's having about the same or a better season than Jalen Brunson. Harden's also the bigger name, playing alongside Joel Embiid. I think Harden gets that nod, even though I do want to say Jalen Brunson absolutely has balled out this year. In a perfect world, Jalen Brunson's also an All-Star, but can't put everybody on the list. But NBA fans, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know, who do you guys think should make this year's Eastern Conference All-Star reserves? Like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But if you guys enjoyed today's video, man, make sure you guys drop me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second and it helps me and the channel out tremendously. And if you guys are new here, consider hitting that subscribe bell to stay tuned for more NBA content that I do here on YouTube. And make sure you guys go follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below. I also just made a TikTok and an Instagram page putting out all my sports content last week, so you guys can go check that out. Like I said, the link tree will be in the description down below. But thanks again for sticking around throughout the whole video. Brett James, aka BJ, I'm out, y'all. Peace.